Eleanor, Cy, it's good to have you both. Thanks for joining us today. All right. Good to see you. And Tyler, do you want to do a quick kickoff? Or are you ready for us to jump right in?
Yeah, so this is just a recording hosted by Cybernaut Education with our instructor and guest lecturer, Bryson Payne. He is a phenomenal lecturer and professor, and he's a presenter, and he's world renowned. He's great. He's and now I'm building him up, but he's a great dude. He's also one of my neighbors. So yeah, glad to have him here, and glad he's giving a special Veterans Day presentation. And thank you for everybody for being here. And I'll just leave it to you, Bryson. Let's get started.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in live. I know this is going to be recorded for the Cybernow Education Premium members. So if you're watching this later on, you'll be able to come back and rewatch this as many times as you like. Those of you who joined us today, if you're premium members, you get access to this for life. That's a great thing about having the Cybernow platform. Thank you for joining me. For those of you who are here live, it is a Veterans Day webinar, November 11th. Thank you especially to our service members, our active duty, our reserve and guard members, as well as veterans. Thank you guys so much. We literally would not be here without you. So we're grateful to have you. And thanks for coming for a Veterans Day webinar on car hacking. Well, as Tyler said, my name is Bryson Payne. I am a professor here at the University of North Georgia, just about an hour north of Atlanta, for those of you who are tuning in from far away. I have been here for 27 years now, teaching computer science, information systems, and cybersecurity. I spent 6 years as a chief information officer and hired our first CISO. So the first chief information security officer for the university was actually one of my honors to hire, and built a terrific information security program and helped us get an NSA designation as a Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense and a few other cool things. I have written 4 books. Teach Your Kids to Code is still my longtime favorite from 2015. Go Hack Yourself just came out back in 2022. I've got a 4th book called Hacking for Kids coming out late next year, all from No Starch Press, so you can look those up. The team at No Starch is great to work with. I have a handful of cyber certifications that I have listed on the screen there. I am the coach of the UNG's NSA Codebreaker Challenge team, #1 in the nation 2 years in a row, 2019 and 2020. We were #2 in last year's challenge, and the current NSA Codebreaker is going on right now. That's a 100-day competition in reverse engineering. I also serve as a reverse engineering coach and a senior technical mentor for the U.S. Cyber Team. So I've been honored to be a part of seasons 1 through 4 of the U.S. Cyber Team. We got the chance to go to the International Cybersecurity Competition in Athens, Greece, a couple of years back, and represent the team. Some really cool stuff that this position and UNG have made possible for me. So today I'm going to talk to you about car hacking, but I'm going to tell you how it plays into ship hacking, plane hacking, whether it's eVTOLs or helicopters. Everything these days we know is internet connected, and we've even got semi-autonomous vehicles on the road. These are not just computers on wheels. These are now data centers on wheels. The average production car can have between 100 and 150 electronic control units, or ECUs. There have been some highly publicized hacks against production cars in the news. And so securing smart cars, the new electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and other autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicles is a matter of both public safety and individual safety. And this integrates well into whatever you've studied from ethical hacking, forensics, any other cyber course or program across all the nice cyber workforce framework categories, from securely provision to investigate. We're going to touch on several of those today in our hands-on demo. So I want to talk to you about ethical vehicle hacking. Lots of people have heard of ethical hacking. That's just where you're attempting to get into a system with the same tools and techniques and procedures that an adversary, a malicious attacker, would use, but you're using it to find the vulnerabilities so that you can help the company, help the individual plug those vulnerabilities or strengthen those defenses. If you watch my course from the course through Cybernow called Hack Now, you'll see a section on ethical hacking. You'll see the entire course there is on ethical hacking, but you'll see one section on ethical car hacking, or actually take you through a piece of what we're going to do today. You can watch that in a lot more detail across several videos in the Hack Now course. But one of the reasons we're studying ethical vehicle hacking here at the University of North Georgia and at other universities across the country and around the world is that self-driving cars now have logged tens of millions of miles with significantly fewer accidents per mile than human drivers on average. But when an accident does happen in an autonomous or self-driving car, it definitely makes the evening news, so we hear about it. But it's not just the self-driving portions of cars. We've got driver assist technologies like lane departure avoidance. So your car can detect when you're drifting, like you might have been tired, or you just take your eyes off the road for a second. You may drift into another lane. With newer cars, you have lane detection, so it just beeps to let you know that you've come out, or it can even turn the steering wheel to get you back in the lane. Self-parking, so a car can park itself. Been able to do that for several years. All of these internet-connected features make car hacking a really important topic for us to talk about now, because automobile networks are increasingly complex, tens of millions of lines of code. And if you know anything about coding, every few lines, there's likely going to be an error or a vulnerability that needs plugging. And on top of that, we've got decades-old protocols with very little security. And the tools that you need to touch a controller area network in an automobile range from about $20 with this scan tool OBD link that I have here. You can find these on Amazon. I've got a slide a little later on with some of the information. To about $80, you can get a full OBD2 to USB. So this plugs into the OBD2 port under your steering wheel, the onboard diagnostic port under most production car steering wheels, and then a USB on the other end to plug right into your laptop running Kali Linux or Windows, whatever you prefer. Just takes a few open source tools to get access to your vehicle. Some of the things I want you to be able to take away today are some hands-on car hacking examples that you can use for your own automobile security research, your own security assessment of your vehicle, quick setup of some free, easy-to-use open source vehicle hacking tools. And then I'm going to demo how you can do what we call a replay attack and then reverse engineer more sophisticated attacks on a virtual controller area network that will simulate right here. And we show you how to do it in the Hack Now course as well. All of these are low-cost tools, and it's all you need to be able to test your own vehicle and test other vehicles, as well as work on your modern production vehicle. You can use Kali, you can use Raspberry Pi. I actually have this full setup running on a Raspberry Pi right here in the same office. And then a few open source tools that have been released out there. There's a great crossover with pen testing, with Internet of Things security, mainly because our vehicles are our biggest IoT device. If you think about it, nowadays we've got as many electronic control units in our car as we might have in the entire house that we live in. If you think about the dozens of connected devices that you have in your house, we could have 50 to 100 plus electronic control units or small pieces of silicon, little chips in your modern production vehicle. So these protocols, though, were built back in the 1990s. And if you remember the 90s like I do, we didn't always put security first. We didn't build security by design. We just wanted to make things work. And nowadays, we have to take into account the layers of security that need to go on top of that. If you add on to those old protocols like the CAN bus network, the fact that we have Bluetooth in our cars today, Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, satellite, USB, onboard diagnostic ports, all the different ways that you can plug into or access the car remotely, plus a lot of apps, of course, RFID key fobs, and so on. There are a lot of similarities with other types of Internet of Things or IoT devices. We can use a network sniffer. We can use open source tools. We can perform reverse engineering to find out how to interact with our car in the ways that we want to, like to repair something, or in ways that we shouldn't be able to do vulnerability assessment against our vehicle. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth, but I do share a little bit of this in the Hack Now course here on Cyber Now Education. You can read a little bit more about the CAN bus there, but the controller area network, or the CAN bus, is a really smart way of conserving the amount of copper or the amount of wiring that runs through your vehicle. If you think about the dozens to hundreds of different systems that are running inside your car, I mentioned 100 plus electronic control units. If we had a pair of wires between each one of those chips and the main controller, we would have bundles of hundreds of wires going through our car, like we have running through a big modern building like this one. So the CAN bus network allows us to do something just like a USB, or universal serial bus, allows you to do on your computer. You can have a USB hub and plug in dozens of different devices all through one connection to your computer. Well, that bus architecture allows us to share hundreds of chips and sensors and actuators in your car across just a pair of wires, or four wires, four different connectors if you consider the ground and your positive voltage. But we just need a CAN high and a CAN low. A pair of wires carry those CAN signals. It's a message-based protocol that's standardized in the 90s by Bosch. It's UDP-like. Those of you who do some network operations and security operations center work know the difference between TCP, where you have an established connection, and UDP, that datagram protocol where you don't have a connection, you're just broadcasting and hoping that things make it. Well, our CAN bus network is a lot more like UDP. So we sometimes we need a direct connection for that security, but UDP will just let us blast to tens of thousands of users, for example, for an event or a game or a broadcast. But then we've got very simple network design here. These are just 8 to 16 bytes with no addresses. There's no to and from address, just a CAN ID or a priority value. The CAN ID at the front of each one of these CAN message packets is going to tell us which system it's coming from or which system it's headed to. But it doesn't say where it doesn't give the source and the destination. It just says, hey, this is for the brakes. So your brake lights may wind up being 140 hex, 3-byte number there. So 140 is anything for the brake lights. So if you hit your brakes, you want the lights to come on, of course. The physical mechanism of the brakes may have a lower CAN ID, but you want your brake lights to appear so the car behind you knows that you're braking. But the computer, the CAN bus network, the ECU, the electronic control unit that turns on your tail lights or your brake lights, doesn't know whether that signal came from your brakes, from your dashboard, from the main control unit, or from connected device that's attached to your controller area network. Like I said, there was no security built into this from the beginning. So just a little bit of history of car hacking. This goes way back, but in 2011, the first remote attack was publicized for the 2011 Chevy Malibu. Checkaway and a team from the from the University of California in San Diego showed that they could lock up the brakes while they were driving remotely with 2 different attacks. In 2015, you may have seen a video on Wired or on 60 Minutes of Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek remotely controlling the steering, the braking, the acceleration, the windshield wipers in a 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee. And in both of those cases, the researchers recommended some sort of encryption or something to protect that network. But then they found out, wait, CAN doesn't even have TCP. It doesn't allow connections. So there can't be a transport layer security on top of that connection. This is a connectionless, just an open broadcast protocol, this CAN bus. There have been a lot more recent examples, of course, the 2016 Tesla Model S, 2018 BMW i3, Pwn to Own started in 2019, letting winners drive off with the Tesla Model 3 if they were able to hack in. And then, of course, you've probably seen the Kia and Hyundai USB attack. This is not so much a hack as it is an example of poor security from the manufacturers. They saved a little bit of money by leaving the immobilizer, the electronic immobilizer, off the steering column at the ignition for about 11 model years of Kia and Hyundai models. And it became a TikTok challenge in 2022. They discovered that you could plug anything that was USB shaped into your ignition if you just pop the cover off the ignition there and turn the car on, start it, and drive it away. And when it became a TikTok challenge, that resulted in a 30 times year-over-year increase in theft losses over the 2019 rates. So these are real life examples. You can see the link down there, and this will be in the recording for you. so that you can check out some more information on the USB attack in a Kia and a Hyundai. But if I take us forward even another year or two, the 2022 and 2023 Toyota RAV4s had an actual controller area network attack that was possible. If you can see, I know it's a little bit small on the slide here, but you've got several CAN network segments. So they did a good job in the Toyota. And most vehicles these days do segment those networks so that you don't have everything running on one CAN network together. But you notice that the smart key right here in yellow is on the same CAN segment behind the same gateway as the headlights. And so what this attack does is if an attacker pries back your front quarter panel just about 1 to 2 inches, it exposes the CAN wires that are headed to the headlight that turn on and off your headlight controls. Well, if you can plug into that with a little $10 CAN injection device like the one you see taken apart here, in about 2 minutes, you can drive away with a brand new Toyota RAV4. So this is a real life example. You can do a search out there for Toyota RAV4 CAN injection attack or CAN hack. And you can see videos, unfortunately, of people employing this attack and driving away with a brand new $50,000 to $70,000 fully loaded Toyota RAV4. So these are really valuable skills to know today. These are really important things to know for your own vehicle, as well as for our organizations and for fleets. I have put all of this up. I actually taught this for a couple of different NSA-funded grant programs, and one of those was Insight, the National Cyber Technology Education Program. Insight, if you use that tiny URL that you see on the screen there, tinyurl.com/insightcarhack, I put all of this up there for free. We do this I teach this to faculty members from colleges, community colleges, and universities across the country several times a year. So I've made this completely available it's got a book chapter or two on car hacking from one of my books. It's got a link to the course for Hack Now so that you can learn more. And you can also see how to set up your own virtual lab to be able to do this all from just one quick handy Google Drive with all the information put in there. Plus, if you're interested in teaching this to other people, I've got a faculty-built module on car hacking that I use with my students as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of the tools that it takes to do car hacking, both in the simulator that we're going to use today and with a real vehicle like I show my students every semester here at the University of North Georgia. So the first thing that we're going to use is something called the CAN utilities, or the Controller Area Network Utilities. This is a utility toolkit that's included in some Linux distributions, but it's available for everything from Ubuntu to Debian Linux, Kali, anything that's almost any flavor of Linux out there. You can find the CAN utils available, and then you can build from source if you need to. Then we're going to use the Instrument Cluster Simulator. That's this dashboard simulator from the team over at Open Garages. So Open Garages started doing car hacking like this about a decade ago for about the same reason as I got started. I wanted to be able to work on my own vehicle. I had always done my own timing belts, my own oil changes, my own brakes. I always maintained my vehicles and kept them for a dozen years or more. But as you get newer and newer vehicles, you're able to do less and less for just the regular old hand mechanic. You have to actually plug into a computer to figure out what the problem is. And so I figured out how to fix an $800 problem, was the quote we were given from Honda, with a single wire, a jumper, for $0.00 for my wife's old Honda. And that got me started into car hacking and looking at these controller area network codes and being able to fix things for a fraction of what the dealership was wanting to charge us, or for what a mechanic was wanting to charge. But it's also led my students to be able to go into industry, to work for Mercedes-Benz or General Motors, to work on autonomous systems and work on securing these types of vehicles as well. It's very easy to set up these car hacking tools. In fact, it takes about 9 lines. And I've given you a QR code for convenience there. If you want to shoot that with your phone, you can actually jump straight to that tiny URL. You'll see the Google Drive that has all of these materials in there. I think I've got maybe an updated version of this as 15 lines that works across another 20 or so platforms of Linux. I've even got a separate Raspberry Pi version of this installation script that you can find out at that tiny URL, or just use that QR code that I produced for a conference earlier on this year. So after we run those lines, we'll have everything in place. Now we just need to run our simulator. So the first thing we're going to do is run that Open Garage's instrument cluster simulator. And I'm actually going to pull over to my Linux screen here. Good. So I'm running a virtual machine here, just like I show how to set up in Cyber Now's course, Hack Now. You can build this VM or just start with a Kali VM or an Ubuntu, any flavor of Linux that you like. I've already done those 9 to 15 lines of installation. And so I'm in my instrument cluster simulator folder now. I'm going to run the setup vCAN. So what we're doing on this virtual machine is setting up a virtual controller area network that simulates almost identically the control area network that you would find if you plugged into your car. We're just going to be able to do things safely and ethically here inside our VM, and we can do lots of practice. In fact, this will simulate 65,000 different vehicles. So you'll never get bored, you'll never run out of vehicles to do some reverse engineering and hacking against. So I'm going to run my setup. So I will run my setup vcan.sh, enter the password because it has to have elevated privileges. And now I'm ready to actually run my instrument cluster simulator. So let me just give you a quick view of what this actually did on the system. If I were plugged in with this actual cable to my real controller area network in my car, then I would see a new interface, a new network on this machine. It would be CAN 0, or controller area network 0 for the first one, CAN 1, CAN 2, if we were hooked up to multiple vehicles at a time or in a single session. If I run IP space A, which I normally do to see my IP address and see all my interfaces, or you can run interface config, ifconfig if you prefer on your Linux box, you'll see I actually have a controller area network, in this case a vCAN 0, that's running on this this laptop now. And so if I Control L, get a clear screen. If I want to run that instrument cluster simulator, I just have to tell it what virtual controller area network to connect to. So I will say /ICSIM, and I'll tell it to run on vCAN 0. So I'm actually going to use that interface, that other network that's set up now on my Kali box here. And I'm going to run the instrument cluster simulator or the dashboard simulator on that network. And so right now it's listening to, the instrument cluster simulator is listening to my vCAN 0 network, but there's no traffic on that vCAN 0 yet because we're not running an actual automobile, or we haven't turned the key or pressed the button with our foot on the brake to actually start the engine, to start all of these lights and dials running. So I'm going to do that with the controls. And this will simulate, so right now this is like I'm plugged into my car, but I've got everything turned off. I'm not running any of the systems currently. If I press enter and do a /controls on that same vCAN 0, and I've added the ampersand here for those of you who are good at using Unix or Linux, you know, the ampersand will let me run this in the background, so I can run lots of commands in one window instead of having a separate terminal window tab open for the instrument cluster simulator and a separate one for the controller. I can run both of those from a single command prompt. That's what the little ampersand there does. So you notice that the instrument cluster simulator and the CAN bus control panel are graphical user interface, are GUI style interfaces that allow us to interact with it really easily. So you can see my the speedometer is already moving in my vehicle. It's like I just turned on the engine and it's idling. And so this CAN bus control panel is actually sending signals to my vCAN 0 network, and my dashboard is listening to that vCAN 0 network. So now if I want to run up the speedometer, I can just use the accelerator. I'm pressing my up arrow on my keyboard. I can turn on the turn signals, the right and the left turn signals. I might even be able to get both to turn on at the same time, which I shouldn't be able to do in a normal vehicle, but this is a simulator, so we can do some crazy things. we'll do even more when we actually hack this network. I can also lock and unlock the doors. So you notice now all the doors are unlocked. I'm doing 60 to 100 miles per hour, and I may have one or both of my turn signals activated as well. So we've got the doors unlocked, and we've got the speedometer pegged at about 95 miles per hour, and we're turning on both turn signals at the same time. Now, that's just a quick overview of how we use the CAN simulator, but now we're actually going to use some of our tools to hack into this network. So you can see the commands that we used right there, /ICSIM and /controls. The next thing we're going to run is the CAN sniffer. We're going to sniff this network. Now, I hope some of you have used Wireshark before. That's a great network sniffer. You might have used TCP dump, which is a command line based network sniffer. But we're going to run the control area network sniffer, CAN sniffer, in this window over here, CAN sniffer, on that VCAN 0. So we're going to run a sniffer to listen to this network and capture those packets and even display them. I'm going to have to bring down the font size just a little bit so that they all fit on one screen. There we go. So that's stabilized just a little bit so it's not jumping around too much. And then now if I run up the speedometer, I don't know which one to look for over there, but I just turned on the turn signals and I saw it add an extra line. That can be really good to know. And then I could lock and unlock the doors. I've got an extra line in the readout over there as well. But for right now, you're looking at dozens of controls, and we don't know which ones of these actually do the function that we're after, like turning on the turn signals, locking and unlocking the doors, or running up the speedometer to 100 miles per hour. But that's where our hacking skills come in. So if we were doing this with a regular network or regular IoT device, the first thing we do is something called a replay attack. That's where we would capture some of this traffic and then just try to replay it back on this network. So let's come over and talk about what a replay attack looks like. So we're able to connect to this network and actually visualize it. You saw CAN sniffer. We can also run Wireshark. This is a network interface on this Linux box. So if you've used Wireshark before, you can do that as well. But I'm going to do a replay attack where we're going to, instead of watching all those values in our CAN sniffer over here on the left, I'm actually going to dump all of that network traffic out to a file, just like a TCP dump file or a PCAP file from Wireshark. This is one of the classic things that we try against any type of IoT device. We'll first capture some network packets or some Bluetooth packets. So you've got a new wireless app that opens the front door lock on your house. You've got a smart house with one of those locks. The first thing that we did when we were hacking into Bluetooth locks was just capture those signals. You can use a Ubertooth, use a HackRF1, capture those radio signals for the unlock. And then later, when the person's gone away, you come back and you try to replay that same signal over the air. And in a lot of cases, those locks would open up when those first came out several years ago. So a replay attack is the very first thing we try against a new type of device that we've never played with. So let's show how a replay attack would work here. I'm going to stop my CAN sniffer. And I'm going to, let me bring that back up in font size so you'll be able to see the commands as I'm typing. The command to capture those files is candump-l as in log. So that's a lowercase l, not a 1. And we just have to tell it what network to listen to, VCAN 0. So I'm going to candump-l on VCAN 0. And as soon as I press enter on this, I'm actually going to start interacting with the network because I want to capture some interesting signals from this control area network. So I'm going to press that, come over here. I'm going to run the speedometer up. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the turn signals. Good. See if I can get both to even run at the same time. Run the speedometer all the way up to 100. I'll lock the doors and unlock the doors. I'll run the speedometer back up, do the turn signals. And then I'm going to come back over here and Control-C to stop that CAN capture. And I can see that today is 11/11. Thank you, veterans. Veterans Day. And so I've got a can dump file now that is a log of everything that just happened on that controller area network while I was capturing packets. Well, I'm going to kill my control window now. So it's like I've turned my car back into accessories only. So the car is still on, the dashboard is still lit up, but all of the engine, all of the systems are quiet unless I've turned on the stereo or the windshield wipers, right? When you put it on accessory mode or in a push button start car these days, if you press the button to start your car, but you don't have your foot on the brake, that'll put you into accessories mode. That's where you can turn on your electronics in the car. Your engine's not running, your air conditioner compressor is probably not running, things like that. So now I've turned off the controls, so I've turned it to accessories only. I'm going to use this command to replay. I'm going to call the can player -I, that means the input file, and I'm going to tell it my can dump file from 11/11 today. So I will say can player -input and dump, and I'll just let it autofill there since I've only captured one log file. So when I say can player -I, it's going to take the input from that log file and it's going to replay it across this control area network. Get ready to watch this dashboard do all the things that we just did manually from just the packets being replayed. Here we go. So you see the speedometer is moving already. It's going to start taking off. I've got the turn signals coming on. Should have a little bit of both turn signals. As we got closer to 100 miles per hour, I did a lock and unlock the doors. There we go. And then there we go, unlock them again. So we've demonstrated that a replay attack obviously works on this simple network because this network doesn't know whether it's connected to your vehicle, connected to a cable that just reads and resets codes, or connected all the way to a Kali Linux box running some car hacking tools like this one that can replay anything that it captures from this network. So the replay attack tells us that this network doesn't have very much security built in. It's not looking for something like even something as simple as rolling codes like I have you with your garage door opener, right? We don't have any kind of security to prevent a direct replay. That's really good news for a security researcher because it means we found a vulnerability that we may be able to exploit. So now that we know that the replay attack does work and we can turn the controller window off and run it from the log data, that means that if we can connect to that control area network using a physical cable, we may be able to have the same effect on the vehicle, or at least make the vehicle's dashboard system think we've got the same effect. So let's see how we can work this in. I do this as a lesson plan for teachers, but hands-on stuff for our researchers. We're going to do reverse engineering on this network. We're going to try to find the signal that will represent the the speedometer, the turn signals, and the door locks there. So I'm going to come back over here. I need to restart my controller, so /controls. I need to get that controller back so that I'm going to be able to interact with the system. And I'm actually going to use my can sniffer to watch this interactively. So I'm going to load that can sniffer back up. And bring the font size back down, Control minus a little bit. And actually, we can use a few more advanced features in the can sniffer here. I can say -0000000, enter. There we go. So I'll take away all of those values. You can interactively determine which values you want to have visible at any one time. You use the network mask approach. So I get rid of all the IDs there. I'm going to add back the 100 IDs. So I'm going to say +100. I'm going to lock the 100 in with a 700, a bit mask. Now I've got all my 100 range values. So the keys that I hit there were +100700, enter. That gave me just the 100s. And I've got these large enough that hopefully you'll be able to do this interactively with me. So in the chat, I want you to help me find the correct value for the turn signals. So what I'm going to do is click over in the controller, and the turn signals are not active right now. And the nice thing about the way Can Sniffer operates over here on the left-hand side of your screen is that it will drop an ID off of that list if it's inactive. So if it stays inactive for about 5 seconds, it disappears from this list. And we can see changing values highlighted in red. We've got this colorized. So when I press the right turn signal, a new line is going to appear over there. I don't know if anybody will spot it right away. There we go. So one line just got added to this window. If I let up, one of those lines is going to turn all white because there's no more changes. And after about 5 seconds, it's going to disappear entirely. So let me turn that signal on again. And anybody in the chat able to tell me which line is appearing? Now it's going to turn white. And then after another couple of seconds, it's going to disappear. When you think you've got a guess, I'm going to turn it back on. Here's my right turn signal. Anybody got a guess in the messages? Mary Jo, very good. 188. Hexadecimal is correct. So everybody, Mary Jo got us in there. Everybody watch line 188 on the left. It should disappear when we're not running a turn signal. If I turn on the turn signal, the right turn, 188 appears. So Mary Jo, I think you got it exactly. So the message now is the second part. So the ID tells us that 188 must be the turn signals. Let me do the left turn signal. Do you see that the data message on the right-hand side, the 01, is visible every time the left turn signal's on? 02 is visible every time the right turn signal's on. Anybody got to guess what might turn on both the signals at the same time? Now watch the chat. So I'm able to actually simulate it here because I'm holding down both keys and one of them's flashing, one of them staying constant. Good, Christopher, you got it. That's right. 03 is just the combination of the 1-bit and the 2-bit. So in each of these 8 bits for that first byte of the control area network ID message for 188, the turn signals, you can see 02 is my right, 01 is my left, and if I can just time it perfectly, I can even get a 03. Now, when they both turn off, it's 00. And then after it's zeroed out for a while, it goes away completely. So Mary Jo got us the right ID. Christopher got us the right message. So it looks like a 03 followed by 3 0 bytes. And sometimes we can just leave off those trailing 0 bytes. But you can see over here, we got a 4-byte message in this 188 range. And the first byte is the one in this particular vehicle. And this is what changes for every vehicle that you do this for, right? We have to reverse engineer the turn signals for a Tesla Model 3, different from a Tesla Model X, different from a Honda, a Toyota. Even the same brand of vehicle across different makes, models, and years will have different CAN IDs. That's why your mechanic has to pay for those codes from Honda, from Toyota. That's why a lot of mechanics specialize in 1 or 2 makes and models of vehicles, because it costs a lot of money to maintain these databases of all these CAN IDs and codes. So now that we know this, I'm going to kill my control panel, my controller down here, and I'm going to try replaying just that one packet. Now, I didn't capture anything, so it's not a regular replay attack, but I'm going to Control C in this window. I'm going to use a new command. I'm going to use the CAN send. Now, the replay attack was where we captured some packets that were playing. With this reverse engineering attack, we're actually narrowing down to the exact ID that we're after and the message that we want to change to have the effect on our vehicle while it's sitting in our driveway safely. So I'm going to say CAN send on VCAN 0. And I'm going to use the ID 188 that Mary Jo was able to find live with us. Good job. And the message, hashtag 03 that Christopher identified, and we'll try it with no trailing zeros there. I'm going to try just sending the 03 and see what happens on this network. We just turned on both turn signals solid because there's no other signal coming from the car right now. Remember, it's turned on accessories. Now, the only difference if we were doing this on a vehicle while it was driving is that the turn signal stalk on your ignition, your steering column, would actually send a 0 signal every few, every few thousand milliseconds or every few hundred milliseconds, usually about 2 times, maybe as many as 10 times per second. That turn signal stalk will actually send a 0. Now, it's not constant, so you can override it with something as simple as a while loop. So I could write a while loop that just sends that CAN send 18803 to that virtual control area network over and over and over again and give our turn signal stalk on the steering column zero opportunity to convey that information to our vehicle while it's driving. Well, I'll do a little bit more. Yeah, we're doing great on time. So I'm going to do another reverse engineering example. You guys did terrific on that one. If I run that can sniffer and the controller again, those are the only two things I need to run to be able to tease out these values. And by the way, if we were doing this on a real vehicle, the only difference is we would be actually turning on the turn signal on the physical stalk on your steering column to see what changed in the can sniffer here. And we might use another tool or two to help us narrow it down faster. I'm going to do the minus 0000000, enter. And now I'll do the plus 100700, enter, to get our 100 series back. And that bit mask 700 locks in all 4 bytes of the first ID byte, and all 4 bits of the first byte of the ID. And the 00 means let anything else just run crazy. So it goes from 133 to 1DC, like you can see there, all hexadecimal values. So Christopher's question out here in the chat real fast, this is a good one. I want to make sure to address it. So if I want to simulate your hazards flashing, would we add some more data after the 3? Yes. A terrific question. If we want to simulate hazards flashing, both turn signals on at the same time, and then both turn signals off, we would send a CAN ID 188 of 03 as the message to turn them both on. Then we do a separate CAN send of 18800 that turns them both off. Does that make some sense? But then we would put that in a loop. So we would say maybe half a second of sending a 3 message, half a second of sending a 0 message, and that would simulate on, off, on, off. Does that make some sense? Very good question out there. Keep questions coming in the chat for those of you in the live session. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. So we've got our control area network set up again. Thank you, Chris, for the question. We've got our controller window open here. So I'm going to click on that controller one more time in this window. And I'm going to see if I can do the same thing for the door locks. So I just did this, and one of the IDs showed up. And with everything locked, I let it sit for a second, then unlock. And I'm just pressing my left shift and tapping the right, or holding the right shift and tapping the left to do the door locks. That's what the simulator asks for here. So if I say lock, unlock, has anybody seen an ID that looks like a good candidate? I'm going to let the door locks go away. I'm going to lock them back. I'm going to let it go away. It's looking like it's in the lower half down there. They're unlocked. They got one signal. If they're locked, they have another signal. Eric, good job. 19B. Christopher got it too. 19B hex. So let me do that. Everybody look in the 19 region down there under 191. I'm about to press it. So 19B 0F in the 3rd byte looks like it locks the doors. 00 in the 3rd byte. So I've got 0000, then either 0F if they're all locked, or 00 if they're all unlocked. So I think I've got the message 19B, and then 4 zeros followed by a 00 if I want to unlock my door. So I'm going to lock them. I'm going to close my control panel window. Good job. Deanna got it as well. 19B for the line there. I want to recognize everybody who's following live. And remember, this will be recorded, so you can come back and rewatch this, so you can do it step by step in your own virtual machine as well. Or you can use the awesome CyberNow Cyber Range. What a great resource out there as well. I'm going to Control C to kill our can sniffer. And so this time, I want to run a can send, but not on line or ID number 188, but 19B, like Christopher and Eric and Deanna pointed out. 19B looks like our candidate for our door locks. And we said there were 2 0 bytes, so 00, 0, 0, 0. And then we needed another 0 byte in the 3rd byte, 00. Let's see if that alone will unlock all of the doors. And it did. So all the doors are unlocked and actually open on the dashboard now. And if I want to close them, I think I just have to change that last byte to a 0F. So as painstaking as this might seem, I mean, we've done all this work and we've only captured 2 different signals from 2 different controls. We got the left and right turn signal and both turn signals turned on at the same time, which shouldn't be possible. And then we've got our door locks and doors unlocked. So the turn signals were on ID 188. The door locks were on ID 19B. But we did that just by reverse engineering, just by observing those packets as they were streaming by. We could do the same thing for the speedometer, but based on time, since we've only got about 15 minutes, I'm going to save some time for questions. I'm going to show you the ID number for the speedometer is 244. So just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and send on 244. We saw that we could run the speedometer up to about 100, but it turns out that it's using the last 2 bytes, the last 4 digits of a 5-byte sequence to control the speedometer placement. And if I just multiply it by a good number, E000, that moves the speedometer to 280 miles per hour. And for good measure, we've got the doors unlocked and open at 280 miles per hour. And heck, we might as well turn on both turn signals while we're at it. These are 3 quick, easy examples that we could do hands-on here. When you're doing this on a real vehicle like my students do, I had a student just hack his 2013 Nissan Rogue. He was able to turn on all of the dashboard controls to something different from the real world value. He could open his doors, but have the dashboard think all the doors were closed, so he could just take off in the car, no problem. Or if we spend a little bit more money, we can get specialized tools for, this one is actually for the Tesla Model 3. And then for the Tesla Model 3, you notice we have to tap into a different connector because it doesn't have an onboard diagnostic port. Electric vehicles don't have any emissions, so they're not required to have an OBD2 port. So for a Tesla, you have to spend about another $100, $150 to get one of these EVTV Motorworks. I've got information in the Hack Now course for those of you who are members. You can check that out. You can buy a device specific to your make and model that may make it easier to tap into the CAN bus network, but you can also just clamp in to the CAN bus wires if you have a chip that'll allow you to do that. And like we said, those cost anywhere between 10 and $100, depending on what you're trying to do. So one other step that we might as well show, since we do have just enough time to ask some questions here at the end. I want to show you how to override the controller while the car is in operation or when the car has the engine turned all the way on. And that's just a simple bash while loop. So a simple loop will repeat that can send as many times as we want it to. So even if the car is idling in the driveway or driving down the interstate on I-24 like the Wired reporter was that Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek hacked back in 2015 for 60 Minutes and for Wired Magazine reporting. You can actually override the dashboard, override the signals inside the entire car. You can actually make the turn signals appear on the outside as well as on your dash, just with a simple while loop. So I'm going to switch back over here and start that controller panel again. /controls. So now this car is running. You see immediately it took my speedometer back down from 300 to 0, and it turned off those signals, and my doors are still unlocked though. So if I set up a while loop and say while true, let me control L to clear the screen there. If I say while true, do a CAN send on BCAN 0 on that 188 network to 03. We know that that turned on both the turn signals. Even though my turn signal stalk is in the neutral position, and you can see those lights are off, you'll see what happens. Now my turn signal stalk is still saying 0 about 2 to 10 times per second. I think the most frequent one we've seen is about a 30 times per second turn signal stalk. So every now and then you'll see a 0 come through and those lights will flash off just for a second. But by flooding the CAN network with 188 03s, I'm still able to do all the other stuff. If I run up my speedometer, if I lock and unlock the doors, those messages still get through. And if those messages have a higher priority than my CAN 188, the CAN network will let it through, and you'll see the turn signals flicker for a second there. I'm not able to exactly make it to do it, but that's pretty close. But you can see I've blocked the user in that vehicle from being able to change the turn signals. Now, if this were the radio and I turned it up full blast, it might actually be dangerous to the driver. That just looks like brake lights to the people behind me, which probably won't be dangerous to this driver, but it could cause a 19-car pileup on the I-285 perimeter just south of us here in Atlanta, because the car that's driving that has both turn signals turned on at the same time doesn't affect the running of that vehicle. But the car that's less than 1 car length behind it doing 85 miles per hour is going to see both those lights hit their brakes, and the 19 cars that are lined up less than a car length behind them at 85 miles per hour are going to wind up in a 20-car pileup. So even an innocuous, a harmless little signal like the turn signals, if you misuse it, could cause a denial of service in our transportation industry, locking down logistics for the city of Atlanta, for example, from just a simple car hack of a single signal, a single ID. The same thing for the door locks, the same thing for the speedometer, only the speedometer here is digital, so it'll jump back and forth. I won't do a demo of that one. I want to save some time for some questions. You guys have done a great job reverse engineering. If I want to stop this, I can just break the loop with the Control-C over here. The Control-C. There we go. And you can see now my turn signal controller is correctly showing that those turn signals are off, but the while loop will bring it all back again. So I mentioned if you want to do this on a real vehicle, it just takes a little more hardware. The cheapest that I know of is the Cannable. The Can-Able there you see for $29.95. You can find that out on Amazon still. You can find it if you do it yourself places as well. You have to directly wire into the CAN pins, but if you're doing the Toyota RAV4 hack, that's actually what you need to do. You actually alligator clip into those 2 wires running to the headlights. If you're doing if you want to do something less MacGyverish, there's a CAN tack that has a little shielded housing, and you just buy an OBD cable. I've got the scan tool that I use here for just diagnostics, and then this OBD to USB, or it's called the USB to CAN from Corlan. That's from 8devices.com. It's about $70. You're buying it from Europe, so it takes a couple of weeks to get here. But for $70 to $80, you've got the ability to plug in and check out your own vehicle. I usually recommend people get started with the $20 or $30 OBD link, because that gives you the full diagnostic report, so you can do things like reset codes without having to do the individual reverse engineering that we had to do to use this cable. Sometimes your newer vehicles will have a CAN gateway that prevents you from seeing very much through the onboard diagnostic port under your steering wheel. So the scan tool is actually a little more effective for seeing all of those codes. And you can see a little bit of setup to connect to a real CAN device is all it takes, compared to what we did here for a simulated controller area network. So the quick stuff is you can do this for your own research, your own, if you teach classes, or if you work with other people in automotive or in maritime or aviation industries, you can begin to work on your own devices. You can find a shortened, condensed version of this out on my website, brysonpayne.com. I mentioned it's up in Hack Now as well. And then we've got the tiny URL out there with 2 book chapters, a sample lesson, and all the step-by-step commands, references, and resources. But I want to take a little time and ask you guys for some questions live here while we've got the chat going. I do have a hard stop right at 4 o'clock. All of this is recorded so that you'll be able to view it with your CyberNow Education Premium membership. Thanks to all our veterans. Thank you for all of you being here on Veterans Day, but especially for our veterans, our active duty, our reserve, and our Guard service members. Thank you guys so much for everything you do for this country and for countries all around the world, making the world a safer place, not just the United States. Thank you very much. So a great question coming in from Eleanor here. Are all the commands recorded on the vehicle's command history? Yes, up to a point. If you know, we just had a guest speaker from the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, here last week, and she actually does reverse engineering on systems retrieved from automobiles that have either been in an accident or have been used in the commission of a crime. And so they're able to see, it's sort of like the black box in an airplane. You know, there's still some history on that CAN network and on some of the ECUs and the MCU in that vehicle. So yes, in fact, Eleanor, one great example of an unethical use of this hacking is any of the car insurance companies now that offer a little plug-in device for your OBD2 port. You can plug it in under your steering wheel and they'll give you a 15% discount or a 10% discount on your auto insurance if you'll share your real-time driving history with them. You can actually modify that network so it never looks like you go over 60 miles per hour. Or if you're a malicious hacker, if somebody attaches to your network through any of those dozens of ways, whether it's direct connection in with a couple of wires, connecting in through the OBD2 port, or going in through radio, 4G, 5G, LTE, Wi-Fi, USB, any of the other connectors, satellite radio, you name it, they could actually say that you're doing 150 miles per hour when you're never driving that fast. So they could actually make your speedometer look like it's going 300 or whatever your max is for your speedometer. So messing with your vehicle, first of all, if you do this ethically, you're only working on vehicles that you have the full permission of the owner to access that network or your own permission. So you want to use this responsibly, ethically, but it is an opportunity to test your own vehicle systems. Most 2016 and newer vehicles have enough segmentation on the CAN network that you can't just do everything from the one onboard diagnostic port. You may have to buy one of those Cannibals or another, the CanTact, to directly connect into the CAN wires in your car. That requires a little extra permission because you can actually wind up disabling or cutting through one of those cables. You want to be careful with that. But yes, you can see some information after a vehicle's been involved in an accident, for example. But this is also something you can retrace yourself. You can recover. If you're ever needing to prove this in a court of law, you know that you can go to somebody who can connect in with these tools, or if you're good at it yourself and can pass a good forensic examination yourself on the stand, you could be your own expert witness and tap in and show your history from those MCUs or ECUs in the vehicle as well. So definitely be careful what you do on your vehicle, and then only do this on a vehicle where you've been given permission. Thank you, Eleanor. Great question. Some other questions from the chat. We still got enough time for maybe 2 more questions. I'll wait while people are typing here. And I'll put that QR code back up. You can always find all of this in Hack Now. We have a whole car hacking chapter in there, but then you can find the tiny URL with the Insight car hacking stuff that I've done under the NSA grant programs for several universities right there from that QR code. And you'll find the book chapter from my book, Go Hack Yourself. Thank you, Eleanor. I appreciate it. Christopher, Eric, Deanna, thank you very much. Musadik, Mary, Bimal, Ezekiel. We're grateful to everybody for being on. Kiki, thank you so much for attending today. Sheena, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you. All right. Well, let's see. If there are no other questions, Christopher, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being with us on this Veterans Day live, and hope you'll tune into this and watch it recorded through CyberNow Education as a premium member. Thank you so much for being a member. Thank you for all you do out in the security community. And Tyler, thank you and the team for all they're doing to educate our cyber workforce. We really appreciate it.
And thank you, Bryson, for coming and joining us today. It's phenomenal. So much fun. And yeah, we're so glad. Always glad to have you here. You know, teaching and doing what you do best, and just doing great, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And on behalf of all my students, thank you. And yeah, thank you for everybody for joining. And this will be available on the CyberNow Education website, and soon mobile app. We'll have a mobile app soon where you can watch all the webinars from as well. So all that will be available for members. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mary Jo, Jaya. Thank you very much, Eric. We appreciate it. Have a great day.